Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing Season 1 of The Serpent Queen. So, before I head into my thoughts and feelings on Season 1 of The Serpent Queen, just a quick disclaimer. This show is history, historical fiction, what have you. I do not consider history a spoiler, so anything that I talk about in this video that pertains to any sort of historical fact, anything that is relatively well known or well documented or whatever, I don't consider, once again, history to be a spoiler. So if that's going to bother you, you might want to steer clear of this video if you have not seen the show yet. But yeah, anything that is like just really specific to this show, where they might take liberties, possibly, I don't know, I'll try to like steer clear of like spoilers like that, if that makes sense. But either way, let me put it this way. If you've not seen the show and you really just don't want to know anything about it, it is just best to stay clear of this video. But yeah, if you want to stick around, please do so. So yeah, you guys, let's get into my thoughts and feelings on Season 1 of The Serpent Queen. Season 1, hopefully of a few more seasons. I think this show could easily go for about 3 seasons, you guys. Let's hope that it does. It aired on the Starz Network. It had 8 episodes, and it essentially follows the rise of Catherine de Medici in the French court. Ooh, yes, I love that. The Serpent Queen, I was just anxiously looking forward to this show. I don't consider myself like a diehard scholar of Catherine de Medici. I've really kind of only gotten into Catherine de Medici within probably the last a couple years or so, and I'm still trying to learn a lot about her, and this show definitely made me realize I don't know as much about her as I thought I did. Especially her early life and whatnot before she even gets to the French court, because it's primarily once she gets to the French court and some of the things that kind of go on after that it's like I'm very familiar with that. So yeah, a lot of the stuff that was going on pretty much in, I'm thinking those first 3 episodes, a lot of that was kind of brand new territory for me, and I was really excited about that. And this is based off of a nonfiction book. Oh, what is it called? I should have wrote it down in my notes. Something, I think it's called something like Catherine de Medici, Renaissance Queen, something like that. I might have that messed up, and I cannot remember the author's name for the life of me. But yeah, every episode it does say somewhere in the credits based off of the book by, I kind of really would like to check out the book in the future, since this show has really taken what they're inspired by from that, Time to pull out my notes here so I don't forget anything, yeah, guys. The series, how did I feel about the series as a whole? The show is definitely fun and entertaining. It is most certainly very fun and entertaining, and it can be a little whimsical and bizarre on occasion. I think an issue I was starting to have with this show was that the tone of the show did not feel very consistent, if that makes sense. If you have seen the show, if you kind of know what I mean. Like, I feel like the first half of the show, like I just kind of said, there was something about it that was very fun and entertaining, bizarre and whimsical, and the show was just definitely playing really wild and crazy in the first half of the season, just having a lot of fun with the life of Catherine de Medici and kind of where she starts, where she gets to, and I found the first half of the show to be very, like, humorous and comedic in some ways, not like laugh out loud, ha 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 ha, like that type of comedic funny, almost more like kind of like black comedy, like kind of more dark humor in a sense. And I think in the first half of the show as well, it was doing some interesting things with breaking the fourth wall, where a character pretty much it was usually only Catherine, wasn't it? I think it was only ever Catherine breaking the fourth wall and speaking to you, the viewer, like how I'm speaking to you. There were definitely a lot of interesting uses of Catherine breaking the fourth wall, talking to the audience, and letting us know, like, oh yeah, this is what I'm really thinking right now about this person or this thing, you know. And I really liked all of that in the first half. And I feel like it's the second half of the show that all of a sudden it felt like it wasn't consistent to what was kind of being presented in that first half. I kind of felt like a lot of that dark humor kind of almost ebbed back a little bit. It got a little bit more darker and serious in tone. And then even the fourth wall breaking, there wasn't a lot of that going on. It was very minimal. And because of the fact that it was very minimal, it felt kind of distracting in those moments. Whereas in the first half of the season, when Catherine would break the fourth wall, she was constantly doing it, and it never really felt distracting. But yeah, the second half, all of a sudden, it felt distracting for some reason. So that's kind of what I mean about the tone of the show. I feel like the first half had a different tone, and the second half had a different tone, and how they were playing with the fourth wall breaking, I don't know. But I mean, despite that, I was still loving and enjoying the show. Like I said, I just really love the story of Catherine de Medici. I'm just grateful there's even a show all about her. Now, yes, there was the show Reign. I feel the need to talk about Reign really quickly. Reign aired on the CW network, and its target audience was mostly like, you know, like a young adult audience, you know, young women like teen women through their 20s and 30s, you know, and whatnot, you know, like younger women. And that show is all about Mary Queen of Scots and her marriage to Francis, and then yeah, leading to Francis's eventual death, which they dragged on out till season 3, you guys, on that show. Whereas this show, Francis's death happens immediately within the first season. And yeah, the big thing about Reign, it was also the big rivalry and sort of relationship that, and friendship, I guess, that happens between Mary Queen of Scots and Catherine de Medici. So yeah, Reign definitely, I mean, it had kernels of truth in that show, you know. It was playing very fast and loose with history and kind of rearranging things. And I was definitely really curious to watch the Serpent Queen, because I was kind of worried that I was going to compare it too much to Reign. Because even though Reign was definitely fast and loose with the history, it's like I immensely freaking loved Reign. So I was a little concerned heading into Serpent Queen. And yes, Serpent Queen, I think, is definitely the more, I guess, the more historically accurate. The Serpent Queen definitely kind of plays with history a little bit too in its own way, but from what I could kind of tell and what I could gather, it was definitely much more, way more accurate than Reign, that's for sure. I think it would be fun, you know, to sit and kind of watch both shows kind of simultaneously, almost, and kind of sit and compare what some of the similarities and differences are. But yeah, if you have seen Serpent Queen and Reign, I'm very curious your thoughts and feelings on kind of both of these shows. Which one you possibly preferred? Which performance of Catherine de Medici did you prefer? I liked both Catherines. I'll kind of get into Samantha Morton here in a bit. As I was kind of mentioning at the top of this video that I was excited to see a show all about Catherine de Medici. Yeah, just going through my notes here really quickly. Yeah, I enjoyed seeing her. You're seeing her story, you know, as a teenager, as she even gets to the French court and whatnot. Her betrothal and marriage to King Henry II of France, and then yeah, kind of halfway through the show, her rivalry with Mary Queen of Scots, which does pop up. It's kind of a shame that they went through all of the Mary Queen of Scots stuff so quickly in this show, because I feel like that honestly could have been a whole nother season unto itself. But yeah, we'll get to Mary in a minute here. But yeah, her rivalry with Mary Queen of Scots and her rivalry with Diane de Poitiers, which was her husband's mistress. So yeah, guys. Ooh. And then yeah, she sees two of her sons become king over the course of the show. And then yeah, the final thing that we're left with at the end of this show is pretty much ending with her regency, because her son, after the death of Francis, her son Charles becomes like Charles the Ninth or something, and yeah, he is king. She though becomes like regent in his place because he is so young. So yeah, this show is exploring a huge chunk of Catherine de Medici's life for the most part. Um, Covers quite a number of decades, which I was kind of surprised about. I was kind of thinking the show would be a little bit slower, you know. Another aspect of this show that I enjoyed seeing, because it was really fascinating to me that everybody in the French court kept calling Catherine like a commoner, and she was a nobody, you know, she wasn't nobility. And I kind of sitting there thinking, I was like, I'm a little confused about that. But once I started thinking about it, it's like, wait, that's right, the Medicis, you know, the Medicis were not like huge nobility or anything. They were just really wealthy Italian bankers. You know, they're just really wealthy Italian bankers. Um, and I really like seeing that aspect of her character in this, and how everyone kind of viewed her, and everyone really thought of her as unassuming, and no one ever really paid attention to her, which gets a lot of characters in trouble by the end of this season. And yeah, it's like, the show is called The Serpent Queen, and it's like, how does this meek and rather mild girl, how does she become the Serpent Queen? How is she going to get this title? And yeah, it's like you see that gradual uphill battle with her as she is slowly, little by little, taking control of this court, and I loved seeing that with her. Because yeah, the real historical Catherine de Medici, she's rather well known for kind of being, I guess, what you would kind of call like a villainess of history. You know, because she was known to be really cunning and ruthless and whatnot, and a lot of events are attributed to her, you know. But yeah, it's like, did she really have something to do with that or not? So yeah, it was nice to kind of see Catherine finally get to the state that she needed to be in by the season finale, because I think a season 2 will explore kind of beyond that, because now she's at where she needs to be at the conclusion of episode 8. Okay, just a few other things real quick here. Yeah, I already mentioned that I felt like there was an issue with the tone. I felt like there was some interesting usage of the fourth wall breaking. Um, Pacing, how did I kind of feel about the pacing of the show? I think the show moved along rather well. I think sometimes it was kind of a little up and down with the pacing. Sometimes I felt a little too slow in places, considering how fast some of the episodes were moving along, and then other times, like, I feel like we're moving a little too slow here. I really liked the costuming and makeup on this show. There's something about the costuming and makeup that I think was deliberately not very flattering. Does that make sense? Um, I feel like a lot of shows, they go out of their way to really make actors and actresses look just as attractive as possible in these historical period pieces, and they do a lot with the makeup and the costuming and the hair and whatnot. And like I said, I felt like this show was kind of taking that deliberate choice to almost be rather unflattering with some of the hair choices and makeup choices and costuming choices, because initially I was kind of like, some of this is really bizarre to me and I don't like it. But when you think about kind of the tone of this show and just the atmosphere and kind of the storytelling, just the nature of the storytelling of the show, it kind of hit me. I was like, I think a lot of this stuff is deliberate, you know, doing this to this character's hair, doing this to this character's makeup, to their costuming, whatever, etc., you know. I don't know, maybe that's just me kind of thinking that. I'm very curious what others kind of felt about the hair, makeup, and costuming. Did you feel like it was purposefully, deliberately unflattering? You know, like I said, I'm hoping we definitely get a season 2 with this show, because I think season 2 will definitely explore St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, and that is a huge deal when it comes to Catherine de Medici. That's one of those things that she's often attributed as doing, but it's not really well known. Like, well, did she? It's one of those things that it's like she worked on it behind the scenes. So yeah, I would love to see the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre done on screen, because Rain, unfortunately, did not get to that point because it was canceled right before it got to that point, and I was a little bitter about that. Okay, let's get to some of the character stuff. I'm definitely anxious to talk about the characters and how I kind of felt like some of these historical people were handled and whatnot. Obviously, starting off with Catherine de Medici herself, we have both Samantha Morton and Liv Hill playing Catherine de Medici. I was not expecting like a younger version of Catherine to pop up in this show. I was kind of surprised with that, but pleasantly surprised. I really loved Liv Hill's performance, because then, yeah, later when you do get more of Samantha Morton, I really bought into that as both of them being the exact same character and whatnot. Yeah, Liv Hill was fantastic. I loved her, just her spunk and just her blankness. Sometimes there are just moments where she's just absolutely blank because she has to be in this court. She can't show some of her true emotions. And yeah, I think she pulled off the fourth wall breaking just wonderfully and amazingly. Like, she'd just be staring over here and then just look sharply at you like, ah. And then Samantha Morton, yeah, what an amazing casting choice for Catherine de Medici. Samantha Morton is just one of those top tier actresses that can just pull off any type of role. And yeah, it's like she can play all these nuances of Catherine just so wonderfully. She can play the motherly side of Catherine wonderfully. She can play kind of more seductive Catherine. She can play the ruthless and cunning Catherine, the more meek and mild Catherine. She really pulled off all of those nuances of Catherine just quite wonderfully and beautifully. And like, where is she truly sometimes? Because sometimes it seems like she's steps behind, but in reality she's steps ahead, and it's like you never quite know sometimes with her character. But yeah, Catherine as a character, I really loved seeing her journey on this show. Like I said, seeing her as a teenager, because she's like what is she, like the niece of the Pope, right? She's like the niece of the Pope and whatnot, and she's a young woman being forced into getting married and whatnot. She doesn't really want to, but she has to. It's the lot of women during this time period. And yeah, her struggles initially to really get herself into the French court, and it's definitely a struggle there within those first 3 episodes, that she really has to find her place, find the balance. She can't overplay her hand for the most part, because the moments that she does, then things fall behind and get messed up. She has to learn how to deal with her just really incompetent husband. He's just all over the place. He has his own mistress, and she has to deal with the mistress on top of that. She has to fight against that. It's like she has to fight with the French court, but on top of that, she has to fight with her husband's mistress. It's like she has to fight against every damn person. And Catherine as a character, she realizes that she has to really take things in her own hands at times, whether for good or ill. And a lot of times, things do kind of backfire on her, or things go horribly wrong, and that weight and responsibility is put on her. And so she has all of that on top of everything as well, that she's responsible for this character's death. She's responsible for this character's death. It's a lot for poor Catherine on occasion, but that's the nature of her character, that she does start to get very ambitious, and she's looking out for herself, looking out for her children. She does. I think Catherine de Medici, she has a very like Cersei Lannister type of vibe to her, that she has to be very methodical and meticulous, and just try to get herself up that ladder as best she can, and yeah, she's doing everything for her sons to be put on the French throne and whatnot. Yeah, she definitely has those Cersei vibes, I think, and I love that about her. She has to be very ambitious if she wants to be in charge and whatnot. Yeah, Samantha Morton, I think, did a fantastic job doing all of that. I loved her immensely. I can't wait to see what she does with the season 2, because it should be wild. Next up, we have Ludivine Sanier, who plays Diane de Poitiers. This is the mistress of Catherine's husband and whatnot. Diane de Poitiers, oh my goodness, what a character. What a wild, bizarre character. Ludivine Sanier, man, she just went wild and crazy with this character. I kind of love that about her. It's like she knew what type of character this woman was, and she just really rolled with it and played with it and just was acting her heart out and everything. Yeah, Diane being the mistress, she is a very highly ambitious character as well, and you get the idea that Diane is older than Catherine. She's been playing this game longer than Catherine, and oftentimes she's a few steps more ahead of Catherine. So it takes a lot of balance there with Catherine figuring out, well, how do I get ahead of Diane when she is so far ahead of me sometimes. And yeah, Diane has the love and ear of Catherine's husband, Henry. So it takes a lot there for Catherine to try to say whatever she wants to say to her husband on occasion, because she has to get past Diane's influences and her advice and whatnot. And yeah, Diane, since she is older, at a certain point in the show, she starts getting really overly ambitious. She gets really overly vain, and there's all that stuff with like the gold, which is, I think, kind of slowly poisoning her and driving her mad. Yeah, Diane was definitely a character, yeah, guys, and I think Ludivine Seigneur, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, she's a French actress. Yeah, I think she did so wonderfully with Diane, and that dynamic that she has with Catherine. And yeah, anytime the two of them were together, Catherine and Diane, it's like you always knew you were going to have a really good, juicy scene, because something was always going to go down, some sort of cat fight. Next up, we have Enzo Salenti, who plays Ruggieri. You know, guys, for the longest time, I thought this guy was going to be Nostradamus. This is what happens when I watch too much Rain. Ruggieri, I think I did some quick research on this guy because I wasn't sure if he was a real historical figure or not. And I do believe he is a real historical figure, but like there is just very minimal known about him. That really all that's known about him was that he was in the court of Catherine de' Medici at some point, and he was known for playing with the occult and stuff. But either way, I really honestly and truly, from like episode 1, when Enzo Salenti was first introduced as this character, I genuinely thought he was going to turn out to be Nostradamus. And I'm just really shocked we did not get any sort of Nostradamus shout out by the end of the show. I'm just kind of disappointed and frustrated with this. But yeah, Enzo Salenti, I really liked him as Ruggieri. Ruggieri is just really, he's an enigma. You know, he's an enigma, he's mysterious, really vague and shadowy. But Catherine really relies on him and trusts in him when perhaps she shouldn't. And yet, even her ladies in waiting kind of reaches a point like, hey, he's dangerous. You need to stop going to him, because he's trying to help you, but at the same time, he's also hurting you. Because then when people do pop up and they die, Catherine has to kind of deal with those ramifications and whatnot when she maybe didn't really intend on that side of things happening. So I really liked the character of Ruggieri. I wish there was a little bit more of him, you know. I really kind of like that weird chemistry that him and Catherine had, you know. And then we also have Sienna Nanua, who plays Rahima. I think I butchered her name. Sienna Nanua, the character Rahima. Rahima was definitely a very interesting choice in this show, you guys. Something I have kind of neglected to mention about this show is that the show has basically a frame narrative. Because what the frame narrative is, we know that Catherine's son Francis has recently died. Mary Queen of Scots is still there in court, but she's about to go to Scotland. And yeah, Catherine is waiting to put her next son on the throne and whatnot. So in the meantime, while this is all kind of waiting to transpire, she decides to tell her entire life story to this servant girl named Rahima. And this is the point in the story. I'm definitely not going to kind of get into some of the spoilers, because this is definitely a brand new thing that this show is doing to the narrative, so I definitely can't get into spoilers about this. But yeah, Rahima is definitely in the show with reason and purpose, and I guess for the viewer, it's going to kind of depend on you, the viewer, if you think this worked or not. I don't know. I honestly kind of feel like the Rahima character, even though I did find her interesting and compelling at times, at the same time, I kind of just kept thinking episode after episode, I mean, what is the point of her character? I feel like this story could have just been told differently without her. I don't know if she was absolutely needed, you know what I mean? So I even right now, I'm still just not quite sure how I felt about Rahima and kind of her ultimate purpose and function within the grander scope of what's going on in this show. Because like I said, I think her character is definitely there for a purpose and reason, and Catherine definitely has her purposes and reasons why she's telling this story and whatnot. But yeah, ultimately, Could Rahima possibly have just been swiped from the narrative? Maybe. I'm still not quite sure. Because I feel like I would need to rewatch the entire season and kind of knowing where the direction the story goes and how Rahima is used. I feel like I would need to rewatch the whole show and kind of better pay attention to a lot of that, and then kind of make a decision from there, like, was she needed or was she not? And then we have Antonia Clark, who plays Mary, Queen of Scots. Okay, you guys, I have some complicated feelings about Mary, Queen of Scots. In general, I love the story of Mary, Queen of Scots, her as a historical figure and whatnot. And in most adaptations, I love Mary, Queen of Scots. And just FYI, I found it kind of weird because Samantha Morton did play Mary, Queen of Scots in the second Elizabeth movie with Cate Blanchett. How wild is that? I just love that little fun tidbit there. But yeah, Antonia Clark, oh my god. I don't know if it was her acting, or if it was the writing of the character, or maybe both. I'm not quite sure. I just did not like Mary, Queen of Scots in this show. You guys, I was very upset and devastated that I did not like her. Mary is definitely, how I was kind of viewing it, I definitely found that Mary was kind of the villain of this season. Even though Catherine de Medici is oftentimes kind of seen as kind of the villainess of history and whatnot, you know, she is our main protagonist that we're witnessing this story through. So I kind of understand what the show is doing, that Catherine, she needed a rival, she needed an adversary. So that's why I think Mary comes across as she does, and even Diane Deportier is how she comes across. They needed to be the villains in Catherine's story, I suppose. But yeah, Mary, Queen of Scots, oh my god. She was just too much for me, you guys. She was way too over the top. I felt like her performance was just kind of reaching the point that it was overacting too much. And they were definitely playing with the whole thing of her being like a religious zealot and whatnot, and her being fairly extreme and over the top and desperate, you know. I was really upset with how Mary, Queen of Scots, was portrayed in the show, because normally I just freaking love Mary, because I think this is where I'll compare some stuff with the show Reign, because I think what Reign did so wonderfully with the relationship between Catherine and Mary in that show, they were enemies for the most part. They were truly rivals. But then there would be these instances that something would kind of connect them and tie them together, that they could suddenly sympathize with each other, understand each other, and relate to maybe some sort of situation, you know? And then they can go right back to being enemies, you know? And I kind of loved how that balance was handled on Reign. I felt like there was a lot more nuance with that relationship with Catherine and Mary that made a lot more sense and worked for me. And I love that up and down relationship with them, where one moment they can be sympathetic and understanding, and another minute bitter and hateful and angry, you know. That worked on their show. But yeah, on this show, it is straight up just, they hate each other. You know, they just absolutely hate each other. And yeah, just no nuance there at all. And it was just kind of frustrating to me. And I just did not like this version of Mary, Queen of Scots at all, and how she was treated, you know. I'm very curious other people's opinions about Mary, Queen of Scots. I think definitely just the writing for her was a little too much, and even Antonia Clark. I'm sure Antonia Clark, she's a wonderful actress, you know, I'm sure she's a wonderful actress, but I do think she was just doing a little too much here, a little too much over acting and being too much over the top, and that could just also be the director telling her to do that as well, you know, I don't know. But yeah, they did. By the time the show ends, Mary is heading back to Scotland, so I'm assuming we will not see any more of Mary in this show, because like I said, it seems like the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre is going to be the big thing for season 2 if this gets renewed. Okay, so moving on from Mary, we have the Guise brothers, played by Raza Jaffrey and Ray Pathaki. The Guise brothers were great. I love them. They're like uncles to Mary, Queen of Scots. You know, I was just trying to figure out the whole family tree this whole damn show. I needed a family tree because I was like, how are these guys related to Mary again? Her uncles and whatnot. It's like once I started thinking about it, I kind of connected the dots, but it's like I felt like I still needed a family tree. The Geese brothers were great. They're kind of pseudo villains as well. Anytime they were on screen, I always looked forward to it, and I always looked forward to their interactions with Catherine, even Diane, you know. And then, kind of the other end of that spectrum, we have the Bourbon brothers, played by Danny Kieran and Nicholas Burns, and they're like of the blood and whatnot. Because yeah, what I do know of French history, because at the time of the show, the Valois family are the dynasty. But then, yeah, as soon as that dynasty falls out, that's when the Bourbons come on in, and you know that's when we start to get Louis the whatever. So I think that's kind of what the show is kind of also trying to get to as well, as how are the Bourbons, you know, how are they going to usurp the Valois eventually. So I like the Bourbon brothers. I just like that kind of back and forth with the Guise brothers and the Bourbon brothers. Just they were all kind of comedic in their own way. You know, this foursome of guys, just all comedic in their own way. All four of them have their own individual ambitions and this and that, what they're trying to do. And yeah, this whole thing, you know, the Protestant and Catholic religions is a big, huge deal. Yeah, everybody has their own motivations, agendas, this and that. I loved it. I always loved any of the scenes that had all four of these guys, and here's Catherine, the lone woman in the room, you know, or yeah, when they started putting Mary in there. Catherine's ladies in waiting. I didn't even write down the actresses for any of this. I kind of just wrote down their names real quick. I was running out of space. Yeah, we have Abbas, Angelica, Matilda. Um, I, I, I felt like they were characters that at times were unnecessary, and some of their plots felt unnecessary. They definitely felt like subplots. I just felt like this show was trying to stretch out story and plot when it didn't really need to, when it just really strictly needed to focus on Catherine's story and Mary and Diane and whatnot, you know. And I felt like the ladies in waiting oftentimes took away from some of that, and I just didn't really understand some of their place in the narrative. Ultimately, they felt a little distracting. Not that these actresses were bad, you know, they were great, but I felt like they were just unnecessary at times. And whenever it would go to their scenes, I sometimes found myself kind of zoning out a little bit and being like, oh, I want to see what Catherine's doing. What's Catherine doing? So you guys, that is pretty much it for my thoughts and feelings on season 1 of The Serpent Queen. I'm definitely interested to know what you guys thought about The Serpent Queen, if you got around to it. Did you love the show? Did you hate it? If you hated the show, that's okay too. I just really love the story of Catherine de Medici, and I'm just really thrilled there's a show dedicated just for her. And yeah, if there is a season 2, I'm kind of hoping season 2 will kind of fix some of the issues I had here with this first season, you know, namely that being like kind of the tone. It needs to kind of adjust the tone. It needs to pick a tone, you know, it needs to pick a tone. It can't be comedic in the first half and then a lot more darker and serious in the second half. But yeah, I enjoyed it for the most part. It was fun. It was definitely entertaining. Yeah, definitely share with me down below what you thought of the show if you watched it. So you guys, that is it for my thoughts and feelings on The Serpent Queen. In the comments below, just let me know how you thought about the show. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.